My name is Eric Benari, and this is Games People Play. In this episode, we're going to play the game Peasant. The prototype peasant is the arthritic Bulgarian villager who sells her only cow to raise money to go to the university clinic in Sofia. There, the professor examines her and finds her case so interesting that he presents her in a clinical demonstration to the medical students. He outlines not only the pathology, symptoms, and diagnosis, but also the treatment. The procedure fills her with awe, but before she leaves, the professor gives her a prescription and explains the treatment in more detail. She's overcome with admiration for his learning, and it says the Bulgarian equivalent of, "Gee, you're wonderful, professor." However, she never has the prescription even filled. First, there is no apothecary in her village, no pharmacy in her village. Second, even if there were, she would never let such a valuable piece of paper out of her hands. Nor does she have the facilities for carrying out the rest of the treatment, such as diet, hydrotherapy, and so on. She lives on crippled as ever before, but happy now because she can tell everybody about the wonderful treatment prescribed to her by her great professor in Sofia, to whom she expresses her gratitude every night in her prayers. Years later, the professor, in an unhappy frame of mind, happens to pass through the village on his way to see a wealthy, albeit demanding, patient. He remembers the peasant when she rushes out to kiss his hand and remind him of his marvelous regimen he put her on so long ago. He accepts her homage graciously and is particularly gratified when she tells him how much good the treatment has done. However, in fact, he's so carried away that he fails to notice that she limps as badly as she ever has. Socially, Peasant is played in an innocent and in a disassembled form. In the innocent form, in an innocent form, the hero is wonderful. He is a celebrated poet, painter, philanthropist, scientist, or naive young woman, who frequently travels a long way in the hope of beating him, so that they can sit adoringly at his feet and romanticize his imperfections. A more sophisticated woman who sets out deliberately to have an affair or a marriage with such a man, whom she sincerely admires and appreciates, may be fully aware of his weaknesses. She may even exploit them in order to get what she wants. With these two types of women, the game arises from the romanticizing or exploiting of the imperfections, while the innocence lies in the genuine respect for his accomplishments, which they are able to evaluate correctly. In the dissembled form, the hero may or may not be wonderful, but he comes up against a woman incapable of appreciating him in the best sense. In any case, perhaps she is a high-class prostitute. She plays little old me as sheer flattery to attain her own ends. Underneath, she is either bewildered by him or laughing at him. But she does not care about him. What she wants are the prerequisites that go with him. Clinically, Peasant is played in two similar forms, with the motto, "Gee, you're wonderful, professor." In the innocent form, the patient may stay well as long as she can believe in the professor being really wonderful, which places an obligation on the therapist to be well behaved both in public and in private life. In the disassembled form, the patient hopes the therapist will go along with her "Gee, you're wonderful, professor" ideology and think, "You're uncommonly perceptive." Once she has him in this position, she can make him look foolish and then move on to another therapist. If he cannot be so easily beguiled, he may actually be able to help her. The simplest way for a patient to win in the game of Gee, You're Wonderful, Professor is not to get better. If she is more malicious, she may take more positive steps to make the therapist look foolish. One woman played Gee, You're Wonderful, Professor with her psychiatrist without any alleviation of symptoms. She finally left him with many salams and apologies. She then went on to her revered clergyman for help and played Gee, You're Wonderful, Professor with him. After a few weeks, she continued and seduced him. She then told the neighbor confidently over the back fence how disappointed she was with that such a fine man such as Reverend Blick could, in a moment of weakness, make a pass at an innocent and unattractive woman like herself. Knowing his wife, the Reverend's wife, she could forgive him, of course, but nevertheless, this confidence just slipped out inadvertently, and it was only afterward that she remembered, to her horror, that the neighbor was actually an elder in the church. With her psychiatrist, she won by not getting better. With her clergyman, she won by seducing him, although she was reluctant to admit it. But a second psychiatrist introduced her to a therapy group where she could not maneuver as she had before. Then, with no games to fill up her therapeutic time, she began to examine her behavior more closely. Let's talk about the antithesis. The therapist must first decide whether the game is played innocently and hence should be allowed to continue for the benefit of the patient until her inner adult is sufficiently well established to risk countermeasures. If it is not innocent, the countermeasures may be taken at the first appropriate opportunity after the patient has been sufficiently well prepared so that she will be able to understand what happens. The therapist then steadfastly refuses to give advice, and when the patient begins to protest, he makes it clear that this is not merely poker-faced psychiatry, but a well-thought-out policy. In due time, his refusals may either enrage the patient or precipitate acute anxiety symptoms. The next step depends on the malignancy of the patient's condition. If she is too upset, her acute reactions should be dealt with by appropriate psychiatric or analytic procedures to reestablish the therapeutic situation. The first goal is in the dissembled form is to split off the inner adult from the hypocritical inner child so that the game can be analyzed. In social situations, intimate entanglements with innocent players of the game should be avoided, as any intelligent actor's agent will impress upon his clients. On the other hand, women who play this game are sometimes interesting and intelligent if they can be ungamed, and may turn out to be a quite delightful addition to the family social circle. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next game we will play.